It hasn't even been 3 episodes since episode 19, and Studio Bones is back to being what I hated for a majority of this season, and that's subpar.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Now let me tell you the level of excitement I had for My Hero Academia Season 7 Episode 21. This was my most anticipated episode of this season. This was All Might vs. All for One Round 2. And after watching the My Hero movie last night and being sorely disappointed, I needed a W. All Might vs. All for One Round 2 was one of the greatest fights I have ever seen in a manga, and All Might is just a generational character, and he deserves the highest budget and the greatest animation for his fight. I woke up at 6:30 in the morning to watch this episode and then make a video so I could get out as soon as possible. But for 11 minutes, we have Ochaku and Toga.
How long is this going to take?
This is the worst.
And don't get me wrong, I actually really like Toga and I love Ochaku and I love the ending to their story. But when this is the last episode of the season and we have All Might versus All for One, 11 minutes of the episode is dedicated to people that aren't All Might or All for One. I was livid. And honestly, it's not the story's fault. I feel like Studio Bones should have finished Toga and Ochaku's episode last week so we could have an episode fully dedicated to All Might. Like, they rushed this fight in 10 minutes. We are halfway through the All Might versus All for One fight, and it only took 10 minutes. I feel like they could have fleshed out a lot of the manga, because in the manga, it was pretty fast paced, but they could have done extra details or added more nuance and layers to the fight, which I was really hoping the anime did, but they didn't. And I'm not gonna lie, the animation was definitely subpar. I will say that even though the animation this episode wasn't the best, the All Might suit up scene was gas. Like, that was actually really good. But for something like All Might, I need Yutaka Nakamura.
Where is he?
I know he was working on this movie and that took a lot of his time, but oh my god, that's another thing. I watched that movie last night. It wasn't good. And anime movies, especially shonens, always follow the same trope, but the last bit of the fight is really good. They had a good premise for this movie with Dark Might, and I thought it was going to be really cool if they focused on him, but they focused on a lot of movie characters that really don't matter, and it made the movie not that fun until the very end, and even at the very end, it was okay. I don't even know why they made this movie. They should have focused all of Yutaka Nakamura's energy on All Might versus All for One. Where were the cubes? Where were the building destruction? There was so much that they could have done to this fight to elevate above the source material. This episode should have been at the same quality as the Todoroki episode. Like, that episode made me cry and made me feel so many different emotions during it, as well as having gorgeous and beautiful artwork by the legend Yutaka Nakamura. And this episode should have had all of that, especially because it's the last episode of the season before we go into the final season. And there's so much to explore with the character of All Might, especially because he is like the titular character of the whole series, as he's inspired every single hero in this series. Like, they should have given him the most amazing jaw-dropping animation, as well as giving him his own episode dedicated to himself. But they really didn't do that, and there was so much missed opportunity. I just felt like watching this episode, it was a lot of missed opportunities. And there were so many panels that just didn't look that good compared to just the manga. And I understand Horikoshi is a goat when it comes to drawing and his artistic ability, but this series has made some very jaw-dropping animation sequences as well as art, so I'm not cutting them really any slack. And I think my biggest nitpick is the final scene where All Might is laughing. In the manga, when All Might is beaten and bruised, he just starts laughing, and just all he can think to himself is, what a joy it is to be of service to others. And that is one of my favorite All Might quotes of all time. And in the official Crunchyroll sub, it just said, I'm happy to be of use. So I understand a lot of things gets lost in translation, especially when we translate Japanese to English, so there might have been some localization error. But there is a stark difference between I am happy to be of use versus to be of service of others. What a joy. And this line, to me, exemplified all of All Might's altruism. All Might is one of my favorite characters of all time because of his altruism, because he cares about people at the cost of his own safety and health. And when they translated that line to "I'm happy to be of use," you don't get that sense of altruism that All Might has always exemplified, and what makes him one of my top 5 favorite anime characters of all time. So I felt like this episode was very lackluster in terms of animation quality and art, and I felt like Studio Bones really dropped the ball on expounding on All Might's character. They could have added so much depth that the manga didn't provide, and now we are halfway through this fight going into season 8. So all I can hope for is that Studio Bones pulls out the animation budget for the final season of My Hero, because there is still a lot of good fights in this arc. But let me know in the comments below if you thought this episode was good and if Studio Bones actually did a good job with All Might. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.